6 is talking about our new American government and its system setup. Make sure that while you're doing this, especially if you're absent, you make sure to write in your notes in the fill in the blank notes, or at least print out the full PowerPoint to have for class when you come back. First of all, when they're setting up the new United States, we can see on April 30th of 1789 that George Washington does become our first president. Under the constitutional government, he also has John Adams be his vice president. The main thing George Washington focused on was foreign affairs and military matters. Many times this was approved by congressional laws to make sure it still falls under the new government. Washington's cabinet members includes a number of people that were created in the summer of 1789. Some of them are rather famous, like Thomas Jefferson as the head of the State Department, Alexander Hamilton as the head of the Department of Treasury, Henry Knox, who was in charge of the Department of War, and Edmund Randolph as the Attorney General. The court system that was set up right around the beginning of the United States was decided by the Judiciary Act of 1789. This decision said that the federal court system allows for states to keep their own laws, but that the federal courts can reverse state decisions if needed. So this is where we see that big amount of checks and balances start to be developed in our government. Next, we can talk about the Bill of Rights. So this was an idea of different amendments that allow for the government to still be in charge, but to make sure that if need be, people have certain rights, especially in states' abilities to reverse things that the federal government decides. First Amendment, very popular, is the freedom of speech, religion, press, and peaceful assembly. Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. Third says that no soldier can forcibly stay in a home with a family or person anytime during war. The reason this was made is because during the American Revolution, we had British soldiers forcing themselves into people's houses for shelter. Fourth Amendment says people can't be searched without a warrant and probable cause to do so. So this once again comes from the American Revolution, where people would be taken by the police or by soldiers and look for any sort of illegal product. Fifth Amendment says that if a person is accused of crime, a person can't be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process or representation. So this is where if someone's accused of doing something bad, they can have their lawyer. Sixth Amendment kind of goes with the fifth one, saying that during criminal prosecutions, people are allowed a speedy and public trial with evidence and witnesses on both sides to prove if a person is guilty. The seventh one says that if a controversy has a value of more than $20, then a person has a right to trial by jury. Essentially, the Seventh Amendment says that if a person has something stolen or causes a problem that means that somebody has to pay more than $20 to get rid of it, then the one accused or the one that is negatively affected can have a trial based on that. Though in today's society, it would cost a lot more than $20 to actually hold the trial. The Eighth Amendment said that there cannot be any sort of excessive bail or cruel or unusual punishment for a person. The ninth one says that there are only rights that aren't just the ones written on the Bill of Rights. So people have ability based upon not just these first 10 amendments. And the last one says that it protects states and people from having an all-powerful government from happening. So this is their double checking to make sure that the federal government, which is just now made, does not get more power than it should. Now, moving on, the new economy. Alexander Hamilton, which is a member of George Washington's cabinet, had many things he had to fix because we were a new country, because we were trying to get everything lined up and still have a union of all these different states. The government allowed for millions of Americans and foreign countries because of the American Revolution. We had help from France and Spain to make sure we won the American Revolution, so they're the first ones we think of here. They needed strength in the U.S. credit for future money and trust by proving that it can pay back what is owed. So once you get help from another country or group of people, the U.S. must have a really good ability to pay back. Those sources who helped us must know that that money is going to come to them. Hamilton did a lot of things and fixing many of the ones that already existed. So, proposed to pay back states, which meant that people who had bonds met with opposition from southern states to make sure something was made, such as a deal. He made a deal with those southern states in particular that said if they passed his plan, he would move the capital of the U.S. further south. And they accepted that plan. Remember that at this time, the capital of the United States was not in Washington, D.C. D.C. didn't exist. He also created a national bank, the Bank of the United States, which holds government funds and pays off debts, also to create a single form of currency. So this is where we see the dollar bills come into play, because you don't want a different type of money every state border. You don't have to switch it over. He also said that there should be high taxes on imports, and especially on things like alcohol or whiskey at the time. Now, speaking of the U.S.'s capital, the current capital location was New York. With the compromise between Alexander Hamilton and the southern states, they then moved it further south from New York. Congress set aside a special district between Virginia and Maryland, and this was on the banks of the Potomac River. When naming it Washington, D.C., after the current president, it puts it at a place directly between the Union and what later would become the Confederation, or the southern states. During the creation of this new city, the capital changed places from New York to Philadelphia and then Washington, D.C., because obviously it was under construction. When we look to the time, we also see not only a new government, but we also see people moving west past the Appalachian Mountains. Some of them were, but not all of them have gone past the mountains. Americans were spreading west despite signed treaties that outlawed this, so they were still they have ones like Britain and Spain saying that they're not allowed to. Those two countries used this as a way to make Native Americans stir up issues with the Americans. So both of the other European countries sided with the Native Americans to fight those of the newly made American government. In November of 1791, Washington sent General Arthur St. Clair to restore order in the Northwest Territories that we now own. He was challenged by Chief Little Turtle, and 600 soldiers died in that battle. The U.S. then created an alliance with France for help, but Britain had Native Americans destroy more settlements west of the Appalachian Mountains while they built a fort in Ohio. So with the help of Native Americans, the Britain troops also were able to fight against France and the U.S. At this same time in Europe, while we're fighting the Native Americans, while we're creating our own government, while we're trying to figure out our economy, then you have France in the middle of the French Revolution. This is seen as a rise up against royal tyranny of the monarchy of France, and it ended very bloody and very violent. This is where we have Marie Antoinette dying and losing her head with the guillotine, as well as King Louis, her husband. Washington stayed completely neutral to these events, the revolution over in France. He didn't want to get part of it in any way whatsoever. Britain then captured American ships that were trading with France and forced them to serve in the British military. So these Americans that were in a low trade. When this happened, we can see that Washington sent John Jay for a treaty, and he is successful in trying to create that treaty between Britain and America. Spain saw this treaty happen, and they thought it was a threat because then the United States would work with Britain against France and Spain. In response, they sent Thomas Pinckney to Spain to settle any differences. The United States did. In 1795, Pinckney's treaty allowed for Americans to have free navigation of the Mississippi River and the right of trade at New Orleans. When we look to this line here, we can see that the Spanish territory is the yellow, the United States is green. At this time, they still believe that they should own the larger part of Florida, but Pinckney's treaty cuts that off on the line right there, right around 31 degrees north in our latitude and longitude. Looking at the political parties developing, we can see that this isn't just Republican and Democratic parties. After 8 years of presidency in Washington, D.C., George Washington left office. He wouldn't do a third term. He warned that against the growing ideas of political parties, it was going to cause a lot of problems. In 1796, Federalists, they favored a strong federal government, and they thought the Constitution gave an implied power to the government. Congress could make all laws necessary and proper, and this was led by Alexander Hamilton. So we've kind of thought about this a little bit in Unit 5, but it changes, and it's not anti-federalist after that time. We have a party called the Democratic Republicans, also known as today as the Republican Party. They were against federal government and federalists, and they believed that a strict Constitution reading should be allowed. So you can't bend that Bill of Rights and kind of use it in your own way. The Constitution and Congress powers were to be limited, and that was led by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. These two parties disagreed over regular citizen rules, not just constitutional information. The Federalists supported a representative government, they supported elected officials, and they ruled the people's government. They didn't trust ordinary people to make good decisions, and they thought that those decisions should be left to the educated and wealthy men of the country. Republicans believed that a democracy and liberty would be safe only by ordinary people taking full part in the government. So essentially, these two opposite points of view. One, the Federalists said that the ones in charge should be the ones that have a larger knowledge of things that happen in the government, not just regular people or voters. Whereas the Republicans say that for us to have a more effective government, it has to be normal people, not those with a lot of money and education, because it affects normal people more than anything. George Washington tried to get the two parties to work together, but obviously was very unsuccessful. That's more than likely the reason he didn't have a third term in office. John Adams comes along, and in March 4th of 1797, he runs against Thomas Jefferson and wins on 71 votes to 68 votes to be president. While he's in office, the U.S. fought with France, where they were able to resolve problems in France, even though they were having issues. These people were sent to resolve problems and refused to talk whatsoever. Remember, we have the French Revolution happening at this time. 3 French agents only wanted to bribe and a loan for France. So they wanted the U.S. not to help. So they tried to do things like bribe U.S. soldiers and government members. And they said, well, how about instead of us giving you money, you just give us a loan and we'll pay you back later. Adams, the one in charge, rejected the idea and told Congress to prepare for war because they didn't get their money, were very upset. He called this entire situation where money and loans were suggested the XYZ affair. In 1798, Congress passed the Alien and Sedition Act, which allows for the president to imprison and or deport those he thinks are dangerous. The Republican response to this showed that these events affected Virginia and Kentucky, where they passed their own resolution in 1798 and 99, claiming that the Alien and Sedition Act violated the Constitution and that states could then nullify the act. Remember, this is our checks and balances government. This would also prevent the federal government from becoming powerful in this case, and Adams was urged to declare war by the federal government despite these states' actions. He actually sought out peace with France to try and avoid this issue. In 1800, France agreed to the treaty with the U.S. to stop attacking, and American ships also meant that Alexander Hamilton, who was a Federalist, now opposed his own president. They opened a possibility for Republicans to win the next election because everybody was so controversially disagreeing on everything. In the end, what we see here is that this is the beginning of 2 very separate political parties who disagree on quite a bit, and to this day, these 2 political parties still exist, though they aren't called Federalist and Democratic Republican. It's Democrats and Republicans, a little bit different.